Welcome back to another episode of Bulletproof Mindset, your go-to podcast for health, fitness and entertainment. I'm your host, Dale Crossar, and today's episode we're talking about the reverse diet. This is the single most important factor that every single person in this world should be doing. It's not cutting calories, it's actually increasing your calories. Now you might be thinking to yourself, how on earth do I increase my calories and not gain weight? Because haven't we been told calories is a form of increasing weight and decreasing weight? No. It's far from it. Calories is our fuel for our body to get us from point A to point B, and it's so much more than weight loss and weight gain, and that's what we talk about in today's episode. Now, I'm on the road to 300 ratings. This is the best way to get the podcast pushed out there. I have big aspirations for the podcast, and I need your help getting me there, right? So if you are an avid listener or you're new around here, every Monday and Thursday I release an episode. Hopefully you're enjoying these episodes so far. If you are, the best way you can show some love is by leaving a 5-star rating, subscribing on YouTube, and leaving a comment or sharing this on your social media. Today's episode is a juicy one, and it's one that I'm very passionate about, as you'll be able to tell later in the episode. If you got any value from this, please consider sharing this to a friend who's maybe stuck in that diet trap. Honestly, I believe this is a single thing that's going to help most of us with our health and fitness journey, and I think we've done a pretty good job with explaining this in today's episode. So with that being said, let's get into the episode. If you want to follow me on Instagram, follow me at Coach Crossar, follow the joint podcast page at Bulletproof Mindset __. And without further ado, enjoy. If there is one strategy that would solve the weight loss crisis that we are facing, it would be reverse dieting. I will stand by this point, and in today's episode, we're going to dive into what a reverse diet is, the best strategy to apply it to, and everything else you need to know about it. This is an episode we've done in the past, but I wanted to circle back to it because I've been getting into, actually over the last month, I have taken on a bunch of new clients and kickstarting them in their fitness journey. One thing I do with every single one of them is start on a reverse diet journey. I don't care what they're done, where they're at, the sort of reverse dieting approach seems to be the best way that I've found to set them up for success instead of setting them up for failure. But why is that? Why would we... Well, first things first, what is a reverse diet? And you might have heard this kind of being thrown about before. This is where you slowly increase your calories to get your metabolism burning more food. Now, you might be thinking, how on earth does that work? Well, there's instances in life where we can sort of... How to put this in better words would be, if anyone has went into a bath that their girlfriend or wife has ran. Now, Jill, God bless her, she loves a boiling hot bath. I'm actually surprised she's not boiled the kettle and poured boiling hot water into it, because that's what it fucking feels like when I've jumped into a bath that she's ran. Now, this is a good analogy, so stick with me. Now, have you ever been in a bath and it's quite cold and you're like, I'm gonna add more water to it. So the water temperature is obviously rising, but you don't feel the same kind of burniness as you would if you jumped right into it. Well, that's what reverse dieting does. It's not just throwing 1,000 calories at your food and expecting not to gain any fat. Reverse dieting is slowly introducing a little bit more food while trying to keep your while trying to speed up your metabolism but not gain any body fat. That's a good little analogy, eh? Hopefully you understood what I meant with the bath. Some of you guys I don't take a bath. Baths are for women. Baths aren't for man. I love a bubble bath, right? I'm going to say that. Bubble baths is one of the most great pleasures in life, should I say. Right, anyway, moving on. So, reverse dieting. Let's reverse, no pun intended, let's back up a little sec. Why do we need a reverse diet? Why is this a strategy? Why would we want to increase the amount of food that we have? Well, let's go back a few steps. Most people, we start their fitness journey and they're like, want to lose weight. Cool. How do I lose weight? Eat less food, move more. Cool, I'm going to do that. Do that for 6 weeks. You lose a bunch of weight. You feel shittier by the end. Or you might feel actually a bit better in yourself because you've achieved that number on the scales that you're wanting to achieve. And you're like, yeah, I feel so good. Do I feel good? Is it just a number on the scales? I don't actually feel good. I do feel good. You go back and forth with yourself. You go out in a bender. You celebrate. You go on holiday. Whatever the event you were trying to lose weight for happens. And then you gain a bunch of weight back very quickly, and you sit and think to yourself, was that fucking worth it? Am I better just being fat and happy as opposed to doing all this sacrifice and and not really feeling as happy as what I thought I would, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna eat whatever I want and live a life that I want to live, because this fitness thing is not for me. Well, that's so far from the truth, right? And that is usually the journey of most people when they get into this sort of so-called fitness game. They try a fad diet, they try a Herbalife, a Slimming World. They literally try everything when it comes to the diet approach. Now, diets are great until they're not great. Diets work until they don't. And the best diets or the most, should I say, not best, the more popular diets are popular because they're easy to follow. Keto, cut out carbs, eat 5 days a week, don't eat low calories. 5 days a week, eat low calorie, eat higher calories on 2 days. Do this, like follow this structure. And look, anyone can follow a structure until they can't. And this is the whole problem. We don't have a weight loss problem. We don't have a fat loss problem. We actually have a fat management or weight management problem where we really struggle to keep the weight off for a longer period of time. So what is the missing piece of the puzzle? Well, insert reverse diet. Reverse diet should be a strategy that is in every single person's season of training. I don't care what your goals are. If there's been an element of dieting, or there's going to be an element of dieting, reverse diet should slot in before or after, or in most cases, both. And this is what we're going to talk about today. So let's use a generic example. Let's say on my Instagram story the other day, I made up this character called Bob, right? So we're going to go with the theme of Bob. And if you're a woman listening to this, let's call her, I don't even know a woman's name, I don't want to insult anybody. Bob, what's a generic girl's name? This might offend some people, but generic name, we're going to go with Emily. So sorry to all the Emilys out there, but according to Google, Emily is a generic name for a lady. So here we go. So we got Bob or Emily in this example, and let's say these guys. Well, let's say, like, how do you lose weight? Well, we need to be consuming less calories than what our body requires. Now, this is where it gets very complicated, but we're just going to draw up a generic example. Now, wherever you fall in this scale, and the reason diets work is because you'll operate an average level of calorie intake. So if you had to look back at the past 3 weeks or 21 days, add up the total amount of food that you had in those 21 days and divide it by 7, it would spit out a number. And let's say in this example, it spits out 2,000 calories, right? And you look at that 2,000 calories and you check your weight at the start of the 21 days and you check your weight at the end of the 21 days. And let's say, give or take, it's not moved too much within a kilo or so. It's sort of more or less stayed the same. That would indicate that that food that you had over the last 21 days is what's called your maintenance calories. So in other words, your maintenance calories is like, that's how much food you can have every single day, not gain weight and not lose weight, in the 2,000 calorie realm. Now, our body doesn't just, or not our bodies, our lifestyle never just stays the same. It stays maybe 80% the same, but there's the fractional 20%, birthdays, parties, weddings, holidays, just life events that come into play. And usually when those life events come into play, this is where people have gained weight in the past. So in this example, Bob or Emily here, let's say their average is 2,000 calories. And I know that might be high for some of you, some of the girls listening here, where you're like, I'd love to eat 2,000 calories, but if I had to eat that, I would gain so much weight. But nevertheless, it's just an arbitrary number. So 2,000 calories is the maintenance calories. The party comes along, the night out, the Christmas party, the day out with your friends. And guess what happens on that day? You don't do 2,000 calories, do you? You do 3,000, 4,000, in some cases 5,000. And then there's the aftermath of it where you're not moving about as much. And if you change any of those two factors, that's where you can gain weight and lose weight. So an example, over the last 21 days, as I said, there's an average of 2,000 calories consumed, but there's also an average movement happened, right? So you get up, you go to work, you follow the same sort of routine. Now you take a longer period of time off. So usually when people go on holiday, typically they're a little bit more sedentary. Typically there's more, especially if there's all-inclusive. I've been guilty of this myself, where you just rip the arse out that buffet. You just fucking send it, and you're getting all-inclusive cocktails. You're trying all the weird and wonderful cocktails out there. So you're consuming a higher amount of food, and you're also moving a lot less than what you normally would. You come back from that holiday and you're like, holy shit, I feel like shit and I've gained a bunch of weight. That's all that's happened in there. So that average of 2,000 calories, it's then gone up. And as it's gone up, your body stored that additional fuel or additional calories as body fat. So a little pound of body fat's added on, and then another pound. And over the years, you can see how very quickly you can go from, man, I used to eat this amount of food all the time, but now I'm in a state where I feel like I'm eating the same food, but I've got so much body fat on me. What on earth is happening? This is referred to as metabolic adaptation. And it's basically your metabolism changing. Now, there's a phrase out there called broken metabolism. You don't necessarily break your metabolism, but it adapts and changes to what signal you're sending to it. Now, what do most people do? Most people go, I've got a holiday coming up, so I'm going to cut my calories down. So on that, the next 6 weeks, 8 weeks, it's like, I'm going to follow this diet. And most diets are very restrictive. So let's say Bob and Emily, maintenance calories, not to gain weight, not to lose weight, is 2,000 calories. How would Bob or Emily lose weight on the lead up to their holiday? Well, they would move a little bit more and they would reduce the calorie intake. Where does that leave them? How much calories should we reduce? On average, people will drop anywhere from 300 to 600 calories. Some people do an aggressive cut at 1,000, but most average in about the kind of 400-500 mark, right? So let's say in this example, we Bob and Emily reduces their calories down to 1,500. 1,500 calories is being consumed. Weight starts dropping off the scale. Most people can expect to lose, on average, 0.5 kilo to 1 kilo per week if they're following a calorie restriction. So that's where they have dropped their calorie intake. Now, this might not happen every week, but if you have to draw an average over the length of period that you're dieting for, this can happen, right? So, calories have dropped. What is the metabolic adaptation that happens? Week 1, not so much. Your body's adapting by going, shit, we've got less fuel in our body. Where can we get this additional fuel from? Fuel. Where can we get this additional fuel from? Let's take some energy from the body fat that we have. So boom, a bit of body fat, 1 kilo or 0.5 kilo of body fat is then, energy is then taken from that, and you see that reflecting on the weight in the scales. You see it reflecting in front of the mirror. Week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6. As you go longer down your dieting phase, things get a little bit harder because your body then adapts to that, and like before, the weight in the scales stop going down. And this is your body adapting to having less calories. There's a fascinating, in fact, I'll come on to that in a little sec, but your body adapting to those calories now means that your maintenance calories has been readjusted. So usually this happens, it's really person dependent, but it usually happens around the 4 or 5 week mark, where you're eating less food. You've been eating less food for 4 or 5 weeks, and now that becomes your new maintenance, right? Let's just say for this example, that's where we're going. So prior to starting this diet, maintenance calories were at 2,000, right? So if we ate any more than 2,000 calories, we would most likely gain weight. And when I say more calories, like there's always like a 10% buffer. So you'd be, let's say if I'm having 2,000 calories and have 2,500 calories, I'm most likely to gain weight if I keep that up. If I have 2,150, yeah, look, there's a bit of error in play, because unless it's dialed in for the following weeks, right? So coming back to this example, we're now dieting. We've dieted for a couple of weeks or 4 or 5 weeks now. 1,500 calories was our dieting goal. We've stuck to the 1,500 calories, but we're not seeing the scale shift anymore. What's happened there? Well, the body's going, look, we don't know if we're ever going to get 2,000 calories in our body again, so we need to be efficient with the fuel and food that you're putting into us. And that means that we don't take the energy from the additional fat that you have, because it's like, we don't know if that calories is going to go even less. So let's kind of stay within this realm. Let's get more efficient in burning the fuel that comes into our system. So what's another byproduct? Well, if you're not lifting weights, it looks at the expensive tissue. So muscle mass requires more calorie burn. It requires more calories to keep it operating. So what will it do? It'll pare down that muscle. So that's how you see in some cases where someone has ran a lot and chronically dieted, but they've ended up a flabbier version of themselves. They might have lost 10 kilos, but their body fats went from 30% to 32% because 9 kilos of that is dropped from muscle and 1 kilo has been fat. The muscle is what keeps our tone, it's what keeps our shape, and it's what gives us that sculpting look that most of us desire. So during this dieting process, the sort of next stage down is you get to a point where you're at a crossroads, and it's like, right, cool, I lost a bunch of weight. I'm happy that I lost a bunch of fat. Okay, there might have been a little bit of muscle loss as well, but I'm really happy with my progress so far. But my goal, I'm still a bit away from my goal. So what happens when your body adapts? Well, you have a decision to make. You might need to reduce the calories even more. Now, some people are lucky the first time that they diet, they can hold that 1,500 calories for 10 weeks and not see too much of a metabolic adaptation. But what happens is, if you've been exposed to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 diets in the past 10 years, that history builds up within your body's memory, and it makes it even hard when you diet again. You might be going, that makes so much sense because I used to do the keto diet, and the first time I done the keto diet, I lost a ton of weight. The second time, I didn't lose as much weight. So is that what's happened there? Yes, your body's aware of that stress. You're not tricking your body. Your body's like getting good at adapting. Our bodies are fascinating, adaptable machine that operates and deals with all these different stresses that come in. So you're at the crossroads, 1,500 calories, and you're like, right, I still want to lose a few more kilos. So what do? Well, your options are move more or eat less. Literally, that is what most people's strategies revolve around. So 1,500 calories, cool, I'm going to drop another 300 calories. You then come down to 1,200 calories, which is fuck all in the grand scheme of things. And yes, you're motivated, you're disciplined, you stick to that amount. Again, the weight loss comes down, it comes down, it comes down, and then it plateaus. Now, the problem when it plateaus is your body's new maintenance calories is 1,200, right? So we started on 2,000, we're working our way down, we're at 1,200, and that means if we consume more than 1,200 calories, we will gain body fat. Is that a life that's sustainable? Absolutely not. Now, for some of you guys, which I do feel for you, it's one of the reasons I've got this podcast, you're kind of stuck in that cycle. You might, on average, have 1,200 calories, and don't get me wrong, you go on your benders and you blow it at the weekend, but you're kind of stuck with this number, 1,200 calories is what I'm going to consume. Fair play to you, but we need to get that number higher. Now, why? Well, let's say we started this process at 1,200, right? So forget the 2,000 number. I want to lose 8 kilos of body fat. Okay, where are we at metabolism-wise? Last 21 days, we track it. Oh, crap. Okay, the food that we've consumed on average over the last 21 days is on average 1,200 calories every single day. So we know we need to reduce our calories. This is the only way you can lose body fat is by reducing your caloric intake, reducing the food that comes into your mouth vis what's been burned, right? So you're like, right, okay, so I need to drop minimum 300 calories, maybe 200. Oh man, that's only 1,000 calories. That's only 900 calories. An 8-month-old baby has more food than that. Can you sustain life in that? Of course you fucking can't. Can you be disciplined and motivated to stick to that? Yes, but is it a lifestyle? Is it the only approach that you need to have? No, this is where reverse dieting comes in. Now, sadly, I've seen some people follow this through where even less food comes into their system. They're literally having a bowl of soup and a bit of bread, and that's literally what they're surviving on. But there's another part of this that people don't really talk about, and it's the protein intake, right? The less protein we have in our body, everyone should be aiming for 1 gram of protein per kilo of, 2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. Now, if you measure in pounds, it's 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. This can be 20% above, 20% below, but it should sort of fall within that realm, right? So with less food becomes less opportunity to hit your protein goal. What happens if you don't hit your protein goal? You'll have no energy. You'll lose muscle at a rapid rate. The more muscle you lose, the weaker you will feel. The less muscle you'll have, the less energy you'll have. And not only that, this is where your hormones are starting impacted. For guys, That morning wood that you have starts to disappear. For women, again, the libido decreases. It's the same for both of us, male and female. What else starts to happen? Skin starts to break out, starts to feel a bit dry, your hair starts to feel flaky, your hair starts to fall out. You start feeling like you're just deteriorating as a person, because every single cell within our body is made up of these protein cells. And if we don't nutritionally feed that, then we fucking lose it. We literally are malnourished and fade away. And so many people are operating their day-to-day lives getting about 60 grams of protein. And if they bumped their protein up by 40, 50, 60 grams, they would see a dramatic increase in their health. Now, why do people not increase their protein intake? It's not because, okay, maybe there's one argument that protein's harder to get, but the other thing is because everyone views food as food is a source to gain weight and lose weight, and it's so far from the truth, right? And this is why, back to the point I opened up the podcast with, we need to start, or more people would have better success if they started with a reverse diet. So what is the argument, or here's the main bit of feedback I see when people are challenged with this perspective. I'll do my reverse diet once I lose the weight. I'll work on increasing my metabolism when I lose the weight. I'll hit the gym when I lose the weight. I'll sign up to High Rocks when I lose the weight. Like, it's such a weird perspective to have. And the truth is, 98% of people, there's maybe the odd few that do, but a majority of people don't. They try and they fail, and they try and they fail, and they try and they fail. And before you know it, you're 10 years down the line, you're like, man, if only I had really done this 10 years ago. How many times have you you might even thought this yourself. We always think, oh man, once we're maybe a bit scared to start something because it's the fear of unknown. And when we look back, we're like, man, if only I'd done that sooner. So never live life in regret, but this is where we draw a line in the sand. And after today's episode, you'll have a good plan of action to go, right, that makes sense. That's what I need to do. Now, reverse diet doesn't, just because you're increasing calories or eating more food, doesn't mean it's easier. If anything, it's equally as difficult, right? So back to, let's kind of use the same numbers. So in fact, I'll show you, I'll do exactly what I do with every single one of my clients that I work with, and I'll share some success stories that I've done in the past. Now, first things first, you need to understand that your individual response to this will look different to anyone else. Even if you're an identical twin, what you have food-wise and what your calorie numbers is going to be so different. Not so different, but it will be different, okay? In your approach to this, you may have to do it longer, you can do it shorter. It doesn't really matter, right? But I'm going to explain all the stages of how we sort of run through this. So, Bob and Emily, step one, Bob and Emily come at me and they're like, look, Dale, I want to lose weight. I want to look like this. I want to have more energy. I want to feel stronger. I want to feel resilient. This is how I want to approach my health and fitness. The reason I went off there, because I was like, if somebody came to me and said, I want to look like this, I'd say, cool, probably not the coach for you. I'm not a transformational coach, but what I can do is, as a byproduct, get you there by focusing on X, Y, and Z. Anyway, back to this. So someone has a goal. You have a goal of, right, I want to reverse, or I want to have this healthier, stronger approach to life, but I'm eating very little calories just now. So how do I reverse out of that? So what you do is you track your food, right? I would say tracking food up to 21 days is the best approach. You can track your food for a week. It doesn't necessarily matter. You just want to get a baseline of how much food have you been consuming. So if I go into it and I say, okay, Bob, Emily, start eating 2,000 calories. Emily might gain weight on the first week because her maintenance of calories has been sitting at 1,200. Same with Bob, he might actually find that he loses weight because his maintenance calories is maybe at 2,000. So the whole idea of tracking isn't to go, right, I'm working with a PT now, I need to make sure, right, I didn't have a roan sausage this morning, I had a banana and Weetabix. No, I want to know if you had the roan sausage. I want everything to stay the same for at least 21 days. Why? Because I want to understand where your metabolism's sitting at. So you track food every single day, track as best you can. Tracking, again, it doesn't need to be 100%, but we want to get an idea of what food that you're having. So let's leave 20% for marginal error. Every day that we have all our meals tracked and all our food tracked, we can then add those days up. So in most people's instances, they miss a Sunday, they miss the odd Tuesday, just for whatever reason. There's no perfect score in most cases, right? So I'll look at the days where we've got everything tracked, and let's say 18 of the 21 days, we have full days worth of data. So what I do is I add up those 18 days, right? And I'm going to throw out random numbers, right? I'll throw out a couple, right? I'll just say day 1 was 1900. Day 2 was 2200. Day 3 was 1500. Day 4 was 1600. Day 5 was 1800. Day 6 was 1900. And day 7 was 1750, right? So let's say in this example, we're doing 7 days, but just imagine that for the 21 days. So I'll add up as I said, the 18 days worth of data. I would hit total, and then I would divide by the number of days that I have. So in this example, I'll divide by 18 because I've got 18 days worth of data. The numbers that I just called out there was 7, so I'm going to divide that number by 7. So total calories was 12,650 of the numbers that I just shouted out there, right? So I divide that by 7. And as long as the person who's tracking their food weighs themselves at the start and weighs themselves at the end of the 21 days, as long as there isn't too much of a dramatic drop or gain in weight within a kilo difference, we can make a good estimate that that's where their food's at, okay? So in this example, when I've divided by 7, Bob or Emily's calories is roughly sitting at 1,807 calories, okay? So I've now got a baseline sheet. I've got a baseline number to work off. What do I do from here? First things first, for this reverse diet to be successful, we need a couple of things to be happening. We need a good amount of protein intake. Arguably, I would add in fibre too. That's me personally. Not many people talk about that. Just from a digestion point of view, I think fibre plays a big part in how our appetite is going on. I mean, when everyone's bloated, the last thing you want to do is eat food, right? So if we've got a nice bodily fluid, a nice poop happening a couple of times a day, we're peeing often, then we're not going to feel as kind of backed up or blocked up, right? So taking a step back again, we have made the decision, okay, I'm going to reverse diet. Assessing my calories, Dale, I'm at 1,800 calories, so what do I do just now? In some cases, we might not reverse diet here. So I said at the start of this that sometimes people will go into dieting, or some people will be better to go into reverse dieting. Now, I would argue that most people who have tried dieting before haven't tried the reverse diet, and that's why I try and point them down that route. So here's how I make the decision with the clients that I work with. So I turn to Bob and Emily and I say, okay, your average of calories that you've consumed over the last 21 days is 1,807. Can we take 400 calories away from that right now and stick to that for a 4 to 6 week period? Take 400 calories away from that leaves you with 1,400 calories, right? Most people is like, yeah, I can do that, no problem. I'm like, right, cool. Can we do that again? And most people again were like, yeah, I could stick to that. But when you do the math on what we've got there, that leaves us with just shy of 1,000 calories. 1,000 calories and 7 to be specific in this example. Again, if I have 3 meals throughout the day, can that in fact, a nice comparison to make is, can I go out for a meal with my partner, with my family, and not feel dead restricted, right? Most people can do 1,500 calories on a 3-course meal, dinner, drinks, and all that sort of stuff pretty easy, right? I'm not saying you do that all the time, but to be able to enjoy that and have your metabolism adapted to 1,000 calories and gaining weight after one sitting, it's not a good lifestyle to live. So in most cases, that 1,800 number, I'm trying to communicate to the person, to Bob, to Emily, to whoever's coming to me that, look, that's a good number to sit at, but imagine eating this much food just now and that being where your calorie restriction or your calorie deficit, as it's referred to, could be. And then they start thinking, right, what do you mean? It's like, so you're eating pretty comfortably just now. Are you hungry? No, I feel okay. Right. Imagine this being where your calorie deficit sits at. So you're saying you're pretty comfortable just now. It's a lot of food, yeah. Yeah, it seems like a lot of food. I eat when I want. Cool. why don't the approach that we take here is going into reverse diet. So let's get into those parts. As I said, it kind of went off on a tangent here. 2 components needed. We need a good amount of protein and fibre. Protein is 2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight is a good rough place to start. Fibre, for guys, anything above 30. For women, anything above 25. Every person's going to be different. The way I track this is stick to a number for a week, see how your poos are, how your digestion is, how your bloating is, reassess and test, play about with going 5 grams up, 5 grams low, etc., right? Protein, okay, so they're the 2 components of the nutrition part. The last component is we need a strong signal of resistance training. We need a strong muscle building signal that has to be operating in our body. How do we get that? We get that by lifting weights. We lift weights twice a week, 3 times a week, 4 times a week, 5 times a week. Somewhere in the realm of that. You can do it on 2 a week. You can actually do this on 1 a week, I would argue, right? It just means the process might be a wee bit longer, but why is longer bad, right? As long as you get there, right? So we establish the routine that most people will follow will be 2 day a week, 3 day a week, sometimes 4 days a week. And that's enough to keep this muscle building stimulus. There's another component to this is what is the right exercises to be doing, etc., etc. I'm always going to be a big believer on the free weights, the barbells, dumbbells, as opposed to machines, just because it requires a louder signal of stability, strength, muscle contractions, multiple muscle groups working at one time. And that allows us to go, right, cool, signal is sent, we're getting our protein, we're getting our fibre. We've created an engine, we've created a body that the metabolism adaptation is, fuck, we need to get more food in. And this is where it gives us the flexibility to go. It's like sitting in the bath, as I mentioned earlier. You're sitting in a lukewarm bath and you're turning the hot tap on and the bath temperature starts to rise. But you don't feel, it's not like when you're out the bath and you go to jump in a boiling hot bath, you're like, oh man, I can't go into that, that's too warm. You're sitting in the bath and you're letting that body temperature rise, okay? So same thing's happening here. So nutrition strategy number 1, there's 2 strategies you can do with this. There's the slow and steady approach, slow and sexy, or there is the balls to the walls, fucking send it mode, right? I would, to be honest, if I'm brutally honest with you, see if you're very consistent with your weightlifting, the balls to the wall method is actually not a bad idea. Right, so let's go over the slow and steady approach. So we're still sticking with the number that we just worked out the past 21 days. Bob and Emily have assessed their calories. They're at 1,806 calories, okay? Slow and steady would be every single week we increase the calorie amount by 100, okay? What does that look like in week 1? Week 1 looks like 1,800 to 1,900, right? So again, we're doing the math. Reverse engineer the math first of all. How is the food made up? Eat whatever you want as long as there is 25 plus grams of fibre and 2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. So let's say Bob and Emily both weigh 75 kilos. We're looking for about 150 grams of protein. That's the 2 components that are made up. We got a resistance training set, and the rest of the calories can come from any sort of fats and carbs. It doesn't necessarily matter just now. I'm not going to dive into the importance of fat and carbs. Everyone's going to be a little bit different here, but we increase the calories by 100. Now, in the grand scheme of things, it's nothing. The slow and steady approach is literally going from 100 grams of chicken to 105 grams of chicken. It's going from 2 eggs in the morning to 3 eggs. It's like one little marginal increase consistently for that whole week, right? As we get to week 2, we assess how's things feeling, weight in the scales. Weight in the scales is, I'll come back to that, but some people can be a bit flustered. If you're someone who is flustered with that, ditch the scales completely. But I like to monetarily weigh Mondays and Fridays if you work a Monday to Friday job, just to see how the weight can fluctuate, but it not being a big deal in the end, okay? So 1,800 goes to 1,900 calories on the first week. First week's done. Week 2, we go to 2,000. Week 3, 2,001. Week 4, 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005. We keep following that approach until Bob or Emily comes back to me and says, I'm struggling to eat this much food. And then we go, cool, let's pause here. That number might be, in this example, 2,700 calories, right? And with that slow, gradual increase, with the protein being hit, with the fiber being hit, with the consistency of resistance training, with an average movement steps of, let's say, 8,000 steps, we shouldn't see much weight on the scale. Now, if we do, don't worry. This can actually be a really, really good thing. This can be your body building a shit ton of muscle and you responding really, really well to this process. This actually happens a good 60-40 of the time. The people it doesn't happen in is those not being consistent with the resistance training. But those who do start to build a ton of muscle in a short space of time, okay? Now, you can expect through this process over an 8-week period, so if we have 8 increments of 100 calories, that would take us to 2,600. By the end of that process, you're eating 800 calories more than what you were. You've not gained any body fat whatsoever, or little to no body fat. You've gained a lot of muscle and your strength is continually to grow and grow and grow. You are now in a place where your body's metabolically adapted upwards. So before, when we diet, our body metabolically adapts downwards. This time, your body's like, holy shit, like, this is so much better. So this is a funny thing with this. The byproducts of this, your body shape changes, right? So everyone wants to be a certain weight, but not necessarily a certain weight. They have this vision of how they looked in a dress or how they looked in a picture or how they felt at that period of time. And you get this feeling by increasing your calories, or a majority of people get this feeling by increasing their calories. You start to think to yourself, fuck man, this is good. Now we do our assessment. We're 8 weeks down the road and we're primed and ready to attempt a fat loss phase if the person's now willing. And I would say again, maybe 4 out of 10 times, the individual who starts this process goes, nah, I'm really happy where I am just now. Let's keep seeing where we can push your calories up. How far can you push your calories? Well, this is where it gets very interesting. You can go upwards of 3,500, 4,000, 5,000 calories, right? And then you get to a point where you're like, okay, I've got a holiday coming up. I want to lean out for this holiday. And this is why this approach is so, so cool, because guess what leaning out to that holiday looks like? So let's say we continue this for another 9 weeks, right? 100 calories, 100 calories. Bob and Emily get to 3,500 calories up from 1,800, right? What's that math-wise? 1,700. They're eating 1,700 calories more than where they started. They're stronger. They've built muscle. Their body shape's changing. Yes, okay, they might have still a bit more body fat than what they would like, but they're ready to go into their first fat loss phase. What do we do with calories? Well, option one before they started this, their calories had to drop down to 1,400 and then it had to drop down to 1,000, right? We needed that marginal error to get them into quote-unquote lean stage for their holiday. Whereas now they can have a 4 to 6 week approach of going from 3,500 calories to 3,000. And then again, we could tighten up a little bit more and go to 2,700, which is still, like, hear me out, which is still 1,000 or just shy of 1,000 calories more than where they started from. Do you understand how this can be so beneficial? This is such a mind-blowing approach that it almost seems too good to be true. But every single time I do this with a client, they are blown away with, how the fuck is this happening? How can I be eating more calories than what I'm consuming? So you might think to yourself, but surely there has to be a crossroads when the body weight that's being gained turns, it's not just muscle, it changes to fat. And you're right, it is. I'll come on to that in a little sec of where is examples where you maybe want to necessarily hold off. Diet breaks are always good things to do, especially in a reverse diet, because as I'm slowly increasing my calories personally and with clients, it can be a bit monotonous as well. Just like decreasing your calories, you're like, man, this is so much food. And it's like, right, cool, let's take a week where we reduce the calories by a couple hundred. Right, cool. And then it kind of resensitizes that metabolism to eat more food because you're like, well, man, I'm missing X food, right? So that's the slow and steady approach. The full send mode is literally just adding 300 calories every single day and slowly introducing it, right? It's not just jumping in at 1,000 calories. Don't get me wrong, some people do this. I've yet to hear of good stories, because usually what does 1,000 calories jump look like compared to the 100 calories, right? So your 100 calories, an extra egg, an extra bit of chicken, a wee bit more rice, and an extra bit of bacon. The 1,000 calories ends up being, I'm going to have a McDonald's. I'm going to have a tub of ice cream. I'm going to get a takeaway. And it becomes like this mindless fucking number that you end up hitting. We still need our source of nutrition to be good, right? And I'm not saying that the Chinese or the pizza or the beers are bad, but all of those things kind of makes you want more of it, right? We need to stay dialed with the slowly increase, right? So the balls to the wall approach, within 7 days, we should be up 1,000 calories, okay? So day one, it starts at 1,800. We add 3, well, let's say in this example, the balls to the wall approach is 200, right? So we go from 1,800 to 2,000. We hold that for 2 days. We add another 200, 2,200. We hold that for a few days. We go to another 200. So by the end of the week, you're up 800 calories, right? What do we need to make sure that's happening? We need to make sure we're hitting 2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. We're hitting our fibre intake, and we're resistance training. We're lifting weights. We're getting a good strength building signal within our body, right? A side note, the strength building signal is alive. That doesn't mean you need to be working out every day, right? So if you're working out 2 days a week, it's usually it's roaring and alive for a good 2-3 day crossover. So you work out Monday, Thursday, that's still there. Saturday, Sunday, back to Monday, it's spiked up again. Tuesday, Wednesday, right? So just bear that in mind. You don't need to be like resistance training hard all the time. I would definitely say full body training days, and I'd give a day in between, right? I wouldn't work out Monday, Tuesday, but sometimes if depending on your work schedule, you might have to do them back to back, and that's okay to do now and then as well. When you build muscle, and if you don't lift weights, you don't necessarily lose muscle until like the 20-day period mark, as long as you're feeding your body the right amount of protein and you're getting the right amount of nutrients in. So that's a pretty cool fact to know. So the aggressive approach is the same. It's literally the same journey. It's just you add more calories at the start. And this is all right for people who don't necessarily care about what the weight in the scales is. Some of the clients that I've had where they're really worried about that weight in the scales, and they have this attachment to food that, oh my God, if I eat more food, it's going to go straight to my waistline and straight to my lower back. And it's like, not necessarily. And this is an example where we can slowly ease them into that. So it's like they're sitting in the bath. We're turning the temperature up slowly. We're not just chucking them into a boiling hot bath, right? Don't know why that's an analogy I'm sticking with, but we're going with it because I quite like it. Okay, is there an example where this doesn't work? It's not that it doesn't work. It's sometimes you might have to do this for a year. You might think, fuck, a year? Why a year? And I'll share a few examples of clients I've worked with in the past where 20 plus years of their life, they have done every diet under the sun. And this is for yous out there who are in a similar position. I feel for you, like I really do, because you've been caught up in the fucking propaganda of media. The Beyonce diet, eat low-fat diet, drink shakes instead of eating food diet, do the 5-2 diet, the lentil soup diet. I feel like I'm rhyming diet. I feel I spit some bars diet. But the Mars bar diet, they literally, you've been exposed to cutting calories, and you've had this fluctuation where you cut calories for long periods of time, a couple of days of spiking the calories, long periods of time. And what your metabolism done is so resilient and so resistant to when you increase food. It's like, nah, I'm being so stubborn with this little amount of food because you spent majority of our life in that. And that can be a very hard signal to fight against. Now, it's not impossible, but I've had stories with clients where we've worked in this for 10 months and weight on the scales, we've seen it move a kilo downwards when we went into their fat loss phase. And that seems like a hard trade-off. Fuck you want me to be busting my ass off for 10 months just to get a kilo down on in terms of weight? But see, the side part of this story, the scales might have only came down a kilo, but the waist came down 10 inches. The arms came down 4 inches. The body shape does change, but the weight in the scales might not, because you're sort of building the muscle that is maybe deteriorated over the years. You're building that back up and some. You're getting stronger, and it's just a longer horizon. So there is examples and cases where this process might be a long one, but just because it's a long time horizon doesn't mean that it's something that should put you off, because this isn't something that you should be doing as a one-off. Like, you generally, this should help you buy into the idea that you're committed to this for life. It's like so a lot of people just do it 6 weeks prior to the holiday, 8 weeks prior to their holiday, 12 weeks prior to the wedding, whatever it is that they're going on. But when you think about the power of working on your health and fitness, getting stronger inside the gym, it transpires to so many other aspects of your life. Combining this with refeeding and reverse dieting to a place where you get stronger and more resilient, what that carries over to what is some of the byproducts? Better hair, better skin, better nails, better energy, stronger, being able to get up and go, have the energy to do the things that you love, play with your kids, play with your grandkids. I know that's things that we don't necessarily think about in our 20s, 30s and maybe even 40s, but we're all sadly affected by how our parents are evolving through their later years in life, and sadly some of you guys have lost your parents as well, and that's a hard pill to swallow that we just chalk up to, it's just part and parcel of getting older. It doesn't have to be. It generally doesn't. And this approach is why I'm so passionate about this. It's why I'm so passionate about getting people into lifting weights, and a combination of a good resistance training program versus a good kind of higher calorie, nutritionally state metabolism. Oh man, that is a recipe for a beautiful life. And look, it's not Chris Bumstead Olympia stage ready. It's not Eddie Hall powerlifting. It's just feeling good in yourself. You're stronger relative to where you started. I couldn't squat I couldn't barbell back squat. I couldn't lift the shopping in with both hands. I couldn't reach my hand above head. It's so relative and so different from person to person, and it's honestly a beautiful place to be in. So, summary then: reverse dieting is something that you need to do. Let's kind of see this through the next chapter. You increase your calories, your body's adapted to, let's say, Bob and Emily started on 1800 calories. They introduced this reverse dieting method. They got themselves up to 2,500, 3,000 calories. How long do you stay there for? We stay there, I would say, for a good, 4 or 5. You stay there for as long as you want until you're ready to go into your first fat loss journey. Your fat loss journey should only be 4 to 6 weeks, and then it should be, again, repeating the process, right? So you now have history, right? So you go into your fat loss journey, you work up to 2,500, 3,000 calories, you make the decision to drop 500 calories below, and you stick to that for, let's say, 3 weeks, right? Let's not go 4 to 6, let's stick with 3 weeks. And we assess, how did that go? The less calories you're maybe a little bit challenged with, it didn't feel as comfortable, so you're like, let me push calories a little bit higher. And then you get to a point where you're like, yes, this is easier to follow. So maybe when you diet down to 2,500, 2,000 calories, that's still a bit low for you, that's still a bit hard to stick to. And you're like, right, okay, could I go higher? Yes, okay, you just have a longer time horizon. As I said, you work on your metabolism to take in 3,000 to 3,500 calories, and you start from there, okay? So that kind of wraps up where we're at. That hopefully gives you an idea of what we have to do reverse dieting wise. If I've missed anything, please reach out to me, okay? You can find me on Instagram, you can comment below this video, message me personally. I'd be happy to help out. I'd love to help out, actually. If there's anything I missed whatsoever or any other questions that you have, let me know and I'll do a follow-up response to it, either personally, and if you're happy with me talking about the situation on the podcast, I'll maybe do a live coaching where I'll show you what the ins and outs would be. So let's wrap things up there. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you guys on the next one.